it's an honor obviously to moderate this group of people. We have 5 distinctive speakers plus a couple of additional guests who can also speak, plus a big audience on streaming that actually is listening to us, right? And the backgrounds, you will introduce yourself briefly, but it's quite an interesting group of people here because we have backgrounds from private sector, from public sector. We have backgrounds, from early stages, startups, scale-ups, maturity companies, NGOs. So we cover a bit broad spectrum of people, and we hope, with this conversation, that you are going to help us, to understand how AI is going to foster, basically, global collaboration and, cross-cultural understanding, right? So that's basically the basis of the conversation. So a bit of context that, of course, we know, but for the people on streaming, in a quite increasingly international, environment in which we are moving on, a much more interconnected world. Obviously, education is core and center, and it's going to play quite a pivotal role in the shaping of the future, right? And it's because of this interconnectivity. Of course, this is going to take, a multiplier effect. What I like to say, right? What if we think about the traditional education, meaning without AI, if I may, there has been quite a lot of challenges, right, on how to address the scalability of the model, how to go into new geographies, different cultures, different socio-economical, groups of people, right? And we hope, and I think this group have this hope that AI could be really the true force to make this transformation possible, right? And that's a bit of the content. I also understand a bit from some of you on the previous debates that we have that you're going to talk also a little bit about how AI can personalize not only the content of the education but also the experience and bring this to different geographies, different socioeconomical status, different cultures, and adapt it all, right? Which is also quite unique. So with all that in mind, let's start maybe a bit of first round of knowing who is on the table, who is here today with us, and then we move on to questions. Maybe I can start myself, and then we can maybe do a bit of a round. So I'm Enrique Gonzalez. Many people call me Kiri, so feel free, Enrique or Kiri. I'm senior partner, 20 plus years at McKinsey. I have a bit of a global picture, having worked in 30 countries globally. I lead telecom, media, tech, and education in Iberia, Spain, and Portugal, so that's part of the reason I'm here. But to be honest, the main reason I'm here is have a passion of education. I really believe that's the motor of change. And I combine this McKinsey role with some teaching experience. So I was teacher actually, and someone mentioned that as the kids in ICAI. So here it's a university, engineering university I teach. In the past, then I teach at MIT, MBA. Then not anymore. Now I teach here in IA Business School and UNIR. So as you see, I also have a bit of a passion. So I want to really get a bit of your brains and, power to learn from you guys, right? So with that, maybe, we can start with a bit of an introduction. Mark, do you want to start, and then Ben, and we move forward?
Well, I'll say hello. You, I think, know me as the founder of the Center for AI and Digital Policy. I have 2 other hats, at least. One, I'm also a professor at Georgetown Law, where I teach GDPR. And I told my students this semester that if they used generative AI to write their papers, I would use generative AI to grade them. So this was our deal. And, as I mentioned also, I'm a chess player, but also a chess instructor. And so I'm interested in the role of AI, particularly in scholastic environments where, people have great exposure to technologies, and we can see, a lot of rapid progress, but there are also some costs. So.
I'm Ben Nelson. I'm the founder of the Minerva Project, which initially built Minerva University and now builds Minerva programs all over the world. We're focused on reforming higher education for a post-AI world. Of course, we assumed the post-AI world would happen in 2013, not in 2023, so we were a little bit early to the game, but that just means that we live in the future.
Hi everyone, my name is Zubair. I am the founder of an edtech startup called Z-Notes. Z-Notes is addressing inequalities in education, especially at secondary school examinations, and we do so by providing free educational resources and peer learning support that has benefited over 5 million students and teachers in 190 countries.
Amazing. Hi, I'm Andrew Ehrenkrantz. I'm here in my board capacity wearing several hats. One, I'm on the Brookings Council on Universal Education. Also, I'm on the advisory board of the International Rescue Committee, so a large humanitarian refugee organization that does education. But more specifically with AI, I'm also board chair of a smaller teen youth refugee nonprofit that's providing a long-term holistic solution that's leveraging cutting-edge ideas like design thinking oriented curriculum, sort of at the intersection of youth education, well-being, and job readiness. And we started with digital literacy, we expanded into entrepreneurship and leadership, and now have 300 hours of deep curriculum, and just recently piloted several modules on AI.
Hello, my name is Magdalena Abrier. I am the general manager of a Spanish global foundation called Pro Futuro. It's dedicated to education, to improve education, and to provide quality education in very vulnerable environments in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. We have reached more than 4 million students. We dedicate ourselves to primary schools and teachers, to train teachers on how to acquire pedagogical innovation using technology and how to apply that in the classroom in those unconnected environments using technology. And we have trained more than 1 million teachers. We were founded in 2016, and we are the combination of two big Spanish foundations, Fundación Telefónica and Fundación La Caixa.
Fantastic. Wow, so quite impressive what you five are doing, and especially the purpose of what you are doing, right? So fantastic expertise. So let's start maybe with the first question that I think applies to most of you. Maybe Madalena, you can start, and then maybe we open the mics to some of you to jump in, but feel free to open and talk at any point in time. The first one goes directly to the point of how can AI benefit individuals and collective people, groups of people, independent of the economic situation, geographic location, status. How can we make it happen?
So from our experience, the discussion about AI at present is mainstream. Everybody's talking about AI, about technology, about the impact in education, if teachers are going to disappear, if core skills for teachers are going to disappear, and even media and policymakers are asking us to ban children from using technology. And we don't hear very much about the opportunity that is for the most for the biggest part of the world that is really vulnerable in this sense. So most of the world is not connected, has not access to all this technology, and in fact, technology is the only door they have to education. So we have to take into consideration to understand how to have all this unconnected population also sharing from the benefits of AI and technology. So in this sense, from this perspective, as a social project, that's what we are, and we take care of these vulnerable environments. We have produced already in 2019 a report together with UNESCO trying to analyze some case studies on how to take profit of data, improving quality and inclusive education in vulnerable environments in the world, what to be considered. And the challenges of that research were mainly to make sure that that there is access to data in all countries in the world, that there are policies that take care of the introduction of the development of AI in education in the different countries, that there is ethic and transparency in the use of data, and that teachers are trained in how to be getting power in how to use AI. So all those challenges, they're already, that was produced like before all this generative AI discussion, but I think that they are still on the table. And we have also produced, together with OEI, it's an organization for the Ibero-American states, in 2023, a report about what is the situation of AI in Latin America. And the conclusions of that report were that, in fact, the population, teachers, the education community, they understood that AI was a trending topic, but very far from them. So really not taking part of their day-to-day activity, and that they were very positive about the benefits that AI and data management in education could bring to improve their education systems.
I don't know if someone wants to follow, or you can point out someone you prefer.
I can jump in. And I want to take a slightly different angle to this. So for the whole of the last couple of hours of today, we've been talking about AI in education as if something we need to build. I will argue that AI is already in education because students are choosing to use AI and technology, whether they're given permission or not. Mark, as you said, your students are going to have access to ChatGPT, and it's their choice of whether they use technology in their learning or not. So in many ways, institutions are actually catching up to what digital natives are already doing. And I want to talk a little bit more about how technology can actually break down barriers, especially when you talk about geographical and cultural barriers. That is very much something that I witnessed in Z-Notes and developing Z-Notes and what it does right now. Our education system considers students as passive consumers, that they need to be given stuff but do not realize the agency that they can have if we do empower them. So at the heart of what Z-Notes does is we give agency to young people to not just be these passive consumers but active creators and proponents of the system themselves. With technology, we can train them, we can upskill them, and we can create platforms which allow their work and their knowledge and their understanding to be accessible to students all over the world. And in doing so through Z-Notes we get these high achievers to create learning resources which are available for free to millions of students all over the world. But at the same time, the sense of community that's drawn by these young people who are all fighting this, in our case, this battle against this monster of standardized exams, they create real relationships online. And this peer learning community that we've done through Z-Notes, but there's so many different instances across the internet, shows that young people are more global citizens, and they're globally minded. They're more aware of the social challenges that each other face in different contexts. So I think technology has already played a part, and young people, especially digital natives, have leveraged those experiences. I can give you a very concrete example. And this also shows how I'm getting aged out of young people as well. If you ask a Gen Z right now a question or a topic that you don't really understand, like you're going and traveling to a different city, most of our reactions will be to go to Google, look at TripAdvisor, look at the top 10 best things to do. Guess what a Gen Z will do? They'll go to TikTok, they'll watch 20 Reels or 20 TikToks and tell you like, oh, I figured out that my favorite influencer is going here, here, and here and doing these things. There's so much content, knowledge, and value available across the technological ecosystem. I think the work that Pro Futuro does is very, very important, which is about bridging that digital divide. But at the heart of it, technology is already leveling the playing field. We just need to leverage it and make sure that it's accessible to everyone.
So I'll give two anecdotes, one very pessimistic and one somewhat optimistic for perverse reasons. I think that on the pessimistic side, unfortunately, tools that are available, even when they're available broadly, accrue to the wealthy at disproportionate rates, and there's practically nothing we can do about it. To give you some perspective, in the United States, students take SATs now at varying rates, but they're introducing SATs quite a bit to get into college. Just curious if you, a little poll to our fellow panelists, if you're born into the top 20th percentile, or top quintile, top 20% of the socioeconomic distribution, how much more likely are you to have a 1300 or above on the SAT, which is considered the cutoff to get into a good university? How much more likely are you to have a 1300 or above SAT score than if you were born into the bottom quintile?
90%.
90% more likely. Any other?
3 times more likely.
How much more?
5 times more likely.
5 times?
Or 100 times.
I'm going to go with much more.
24 times.
Wow.
You are 24 times more likely to have a 1300 SAT score or more born into the top 20 percentile versus the bottom 20 percentile. I will tell you, you are not 24 times more likely to be hyper intelligent if you were born in the top 20 versus the bottom 20. It is completely bastardized form of assessment, and unfortunately, many of these tools are accrue to. So I would imagine many of the AI tools that are going to be developed will unfortunately accrue to wealthy students. However, there is a slight silver lining. Different kind of statistic. There was an internal study not published, which I got my hands on, which is always the best kind, on a very prestigious private boarding school in the United States. And it looked at 40 years worth of data on incoming SSAT scores versus SAT scores. And the beauty of those two things is that you are measured as a percentile of on how you rank on math and English, etc., compared to the rest of the population. So again, this is a very, very prestigious boarding school, spends an enormous amount of money per student on their education. What do you think is the incremental benefit, meaning what is the percentage improvement that a student made going out versus coming in on based on those resources?
I'm going with hardly any.
The answer is not hardly any, it is zero.
Wow.
Zero effect. Yeah, pretty close, but it's zero. There's actual zero incremental benefit, absolutely none. Zero.
Wow.
To one of the fanciest boarding schools, and it's true, of course, of all boarding schools. Now, what does that mean? It means that the current schooling model just simply doesn't work. However, the elite schools, even though all of these apps and things accrue to rich students very quickly, the elite schools are not going to change their model. Poor schools, however, that don't have access to teachers, the teachers actually are delighted to do less and less work, etc., they're going to potentially embrace AI tools to actually give personalized education to their students much faster. So it could be that there will be a perverse element where, because schools are under-resourced in poor neighborhoods, they may actually get dramatically better education because the machine almost certainly teaches better than a human.
Well,
Okay. I was going to say, I was just going to build on your first point with respect to probably one of the most disadvantaged populations, which is displaced refugees. And I think it reflects a lot of the themes we've heard at the conference, and also sort of begs the question about your point about digital natives, because our experience in the field with refugee teens is they are not at all digital natives. And that what we all have to remember is the context in terms of making sure that AI is accessible and has equal opportunity. And so you have to start, our experience shows, with the foundational building blocks, first maybe with digital literacy, digital skills, and media literacy, so they even know what the internet is and how to use it and how to interpret those results, which are much more simplistic. I sort of think of it as like the two-dimensional version. Then adding on, again, another theme here is all those, someone was calling the soft skills power skills. So those critical thinking skills, all those other things that give you judgment and reasoning, again, to interpret things. And then, and only then, is the 3D or even 4-dimensional idea of AI the kind of thing that those most disadvantaged populations can access. And so I think it's just important. I think a lot of times AI and the developers, the Silicon Valley folks, think of it as a technology and access is all you need. But there's all these other sort of fundamental skills that have to be there for everyone to really become digital natives and to be able to get the benefits.
So let me begin by saying, actually, my wife is a teacher in Washington, D.C., which is a difficult place to be a teacher. And I think we all have this innate instinct that we want to uplift people and provide them with the necessary resources. And we think about schools, and we think about books, at least we used to think about books. We think about a decent playing field, we think about good teachers, we think about access to the internet. These are all, I would say, educational resources. And our instinct is to ensure that they are broadly and fairly distributed, which I think is a very good intuition. I'd like to suggest that with AI, there's something a bit more subtle going on that we need to be aware of. This is a technology that interacts with children and collects data from children and directs children, sometimes without the full control of the teacher who's responsible for the success of the children. And to me, this creates some real challenges, because you see, on the one hand, we begin with this very positive instinct that AI is this fantastic thing and everybody's investing money and countries want to lead and we want to make sure no one is left behind. But I feel that in this same moment, we need to maintain probably the most critical thing that education provides to us, and that's critical thinking, right? What type of data is being taken from our children in these educational environments? Will it be used in the future for employment decisions or insurance decisions? Is the so-called personalized learning, actually proven to provide benefit, or do we have a new form of replicating hierarchy that's simply been encoded in this technology that everyone's so enthusiastic about? And none of this is to say that AI doesn't offer, some great opportunities, but I do think, particularly as leaders in the educational field, you really have a responsibility to critically assess, to do an impact assessment prior to deployment. What do we think will happen? How do we measure success? What are our steps along the way to see if we're on track? Yes. And to constantly engage. And I think if that process is done well, then the outcome can be favorable. But I don't think there's any guarantee that just by sprinkling AI on universities, everyone is going to be richer and happier and live longer. I think that's magical thinking.
Yeah, no, I'm an optimistic, so a lot of challenges, but I see a lot of opportunity, from, the starting point that Ben was mentioning to, all the possibilities that were around here. So hopefully, we get along all these problems. So let me maybe switch gears, assuming that we all want this technology, right, to be for the best, right? Of course, scaling AI is complex. It's nice to have a starting pilot, it's nice to start initial, but then scaling is when, when getting all the people to use it, et cetera, right? So my question is around, okay, what do you think is the main barrier for the technology to be able to scale across and globalize? And maybe Ben, you can start.
I actually think the main barrier to scale, this is a little bit of a controversial perspective, is that certainly in later on in the education sector, in secondary and post-secondary, less so in elementary, the role of educational institutions, so-called educational institutions, is not to educate, it's to certify. And these are not educational institutions. And we know that because the way that they certify their education using the same methodology, assessment, tests. You administer the same test to the same learner a few months after the test date. The learner has forgotten 90 to 95% of what they tested correctly. There's no interest in education whatsoever. There's no incentive to educate. There's no mechanism to educate. And therefore, if you go and you say, hey, here's a tool that'll really help the student educate, and the tool to use AI to do that would mean to increase workload, right? Because AI can write papers very easily, it can do all these things. So in a new reality, whereas you had before a term paper, maybe 2, now you should have 20, right? And everyone should have a quality standard that is significantly higher than what it was before. A lot more work for the student, a lot more work for the teacher and the professor, right? Using of the tool in an effective way, right? To get them ready for a more productive world. No one wants that. Students aren't there to learn. Professors aren't there to teach, certainly not at higher education, right? And in order to actually scale positive impact, you have to get everybody bought in on not only stopping the decline in the amount of time students spend in higher education. Today, students spend less than 2/3 the amount of time they spent in the 1960s on their studies, and they get A's at a rate that is 6 times higher.
They become much more efficient.
So much more efficient, even before AI.
Much more efficient.
Right. And so AI will scale when students will use it to write their papers and professors will use it to grade them, right? But then no one will learn anything. And that is where it will likely scale first, because it enhances the trend that's already been going. If you really want to scale it, you have to actually fix the certification education divide. You have to realign certification in high school and universities to mirror actual education.
Mark, I'm sure you have something to say on the optimistic part.
I'm trying. I'm going to prompt ChatGPT. Say something optimistic. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. I have a whole lot of AI stories. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name of the guy who started LinkedIn, quite famous.
Reid
Hoffman. So Reid Hoffman and I had an interesting exchange, because after ChatGPT came out, he rushed to publish the first book, basically a dialogue between him and ChatGPT. And Reid, by the way, is the ultimate optimist about all technology. And there was in his book a section where he asks the question, what are some of the risks related to the future of AI in education, right? Very appropriate for, this is the reason I'm pulling out the story. And the answer he got from ChatGPT was essentially this. It is possible that educators and universities will not understand the full value of ChatGPT and therefore will fail to fully deploy this wonderful new technology. Now, I'm reading this ChatGPT answer, bragging about how great ChatGPT is, and Reid, being one of the big investors in the field, telling us in his commentary what a brilliant response this was. And I said, this is not right. If you ask me, what are some of the risks, which was the question he posed, I was thinking, I don't know, de-skilling a generation of educators, the loss of printed history, the inability to communicate. I mean, I could come up with half a dozen dystopias pretty quickly. Now I see the colors going from your face. This was
This is an optimistic answer.
This was not.
We're getting to the optimism.
This is not the answer you were. This is not the answer you were looking for, and I do apologize. But I have to say, in the moment, it's just kind of striking to me, this sort of interaction between ChatGPT's self-assessment, Reid's endorsement, and as I keep saying, the reality to critically think, by the way, in the long term, for businesses and educators, I think is most likely to produce the most successful and the most stable outcomes. Because if we really do understand how the technology provides benefit, and here's where I'm optimistic. I think we have the ability to do that, then I think we will find the benefits.
I think we have to evaluate first. I mean, we are taking for granted that AI in education is going to be a success, and we don't really know for the moment. And when we talk about how to scale all this, we have to think that, in fact, I mean, there is a digital divide, a great digital divide in the world, and they are talking about the States, the USA, which is a different problem. It's not what we experience here, and not what we experience in Africa or in Latin America. So first, we should tackle the digital divide in the world,
Right.
and then implement AI, generative AI. I think you're talking about all the time, no?
Yeah, I think you're mentioning something I hear a lot about. Gen AI is going to bring the bottom to the average, and I think that's a bit, you're talking about the top, you're talking about the bottom to the average, right? Which
Well, but I think that's an important, just to maybe interject on that. There's a reason, because in an AI-powered world, the average really doesn't exist anymore, right? You either using AI and producing better than top outcomes today, at least in productivity, or you don't use it and you really are a laggard. And so the imperative to get opportunity for people to go up is going to be pretty dramatic.
So AI is going to increase the divide?
Dramatically.
So I'll try one optimistic thought. I knew it would come about eventually. So in a lot of my teaching in our AI policy clinics and the law schools and everything, it's about the ability to communicate effectively and to write effectively. And I will say that some of the writing tools that have been developed over the last few years, I have in mind, for example, Grammarly, are very good at helping people who struggle in expressing themselves, write more clearly. I mean, we remember in the early days when there was something called word processing, we had spelling correction. Okay, that was helpful. And then we had thesaurus, better words. And now we actually have tools that help people write better, which I think we should encourage. And I've told my students, you're welcome to do this, by the way. I want to read a better paper from you. And I think it has had a great sort of raising up effect for a lot of people who struggle with communication. But here, of course, is where we also need to draw the line, because I want the student to do the reasoning. So I would say, yes, Grammarly, better writing. ChatGPT, I'm not so sure. I want to see your thinking and your analysis, and I certainly don't want to grade 20 times as many papers. So, but it's working. Let me just say, it is actually working in education.
Can I add one small point? And I was coming back to Magdalena's point around who's actually able to access the technology. It also makes a big difference in what actually generative AI can prompt, because the representation also applies to data representation, and currently the data representation is of a very specific socioeconomic status, culture, race, within whatever data that's been added at the back end of ChatGPT or other generative AI tools. So alongside access, we also need to make sure that the responses that a generative AI tool will actually represent the person asking it. Will it know the lost stories of certain subcontinent Asia or Africa? Would it know the legends? Would it know the kind of the nuances of that culture? And sometimes, and especially right now, even if you experiment right now with certain kind of geopolitical questions, the responses you get are heavily biased or tilted because of the data that's available. And so I think the data representation is also another big point to make sure that the barriers are not exacerbated.
Maybe Madalena, you want to add on this emerging markets topic, right? On how you can, take out some barriers, thanks to AI.
Some barriers. I mean, because I don't know if we're just discussing here about generative AI, and my AI is really based on the data available to take decisions to improve the system, and to decrease the administrative work for teachers, and help them teach better and analyze exactly what they're, or analyze better what are the tools they have to improve teacher learning, also the pupils' learning. So, I mean, AI has been on the table for many years. It's not synonymous, no, AI and generative AI. No. So we are all talking right now. It seems to me that we are just discussing about generative AI. And in fact, AI is a very good tool to analyze information, no, and to predict behaviors and to automatize replies, not necessarily generative. So in the emerging markets, I think there's still a lot to do with data, gathering data, cleaning data, producing data, analyzing data, and providing the tools that the governments need to make better decisions. So it's not yet perverted, no, by generative AI. So I think that in the USA, I mean, you are at a different stage.
We've seen the future, it's a little scary.
Okay, so maybe before we close and we are getting to the limit, I would love to ask you for one sentence, each of you, that summarize a bit, you know, what's in your thoughts and what you hear from others. Maybe we can get around, and Mark, Ben, and...
Well, as I said, I think this can be very beneficial, but I think we need to think critically, maintain control, assess risk, and look ahead.
I think an enterprising country, province, state, population somewhere around the world will leapfrog with AI, will reimagine the entire educational system from the ground up, and will launch the economic prospects of their country dramatically upwards.
I believe if we can address the access to technology, we can level up the playing field. The question is, how do we ensure equal access to all?
And I guess I would build on that with the challenge of thinking of building digital citizens of the world. And I think that takes you to many different planes. There's digital skills, there's exposure to different kinds of thinking, and there's also this concept of citizenship, which is community building and all the sort of social and people side of things as well. And I think if we could build that, that might solve some of the problems.
I would add to your comment, equal access I think is a key for an optimistic view of the future and of humanity, so equal access for everyone.
Maybe I finish also with my own sentence from what I hear. So I think we're in a moment of truth, and a lot of challenges, but also bright opportunities ahead of us. And it's on us, humanity, to really decide where to go, how much we need to invest. You know, if we go for the good way, you know, of course, inequality, you know, inclusion, efficiency, you know, will be there. So maybe with this, just tell you thank you very, very much, you know, for being here. You know, quite inspiring debate, insights, and if I take some of the quotes from this morning, I think I come with much more questions that I came when we start, which this is what tell us we are human, right? So thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you.